what we're looking for right now is to start getting some questions answered about what's going on with this coronavirus. So today I'd like to welcome Trent Cotney. Hello, Trent. Got your coffee cup, good. And John Kenney. Hello, John. Thank you so much for being here today. And John, make sure John's not muted. And we're going to get started with it. I also will let you know that Megan Ellsworth is helping us from a technical side of things, and she's going to be looking at questions and helping us. She is our podcast producer at Roofers Coffee Shop. So here we go.
They took all that crap out of the
There we go. We can hear people. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and mute while we get started with the conversations, and then we'll start taking questions. So first off, Trent, some of the questions that have come in is you are talking all over the country virtually. I mean, your webinars are, every time I turn around, I'm seeing a webinar. Thank you for taking that leadership in the industry. We need so many questions answered. What are you seeing and what are you hearing from contractors around the country on what's going on in the different markets?
I want to thank you guys for putting this on. I think this is a great opportunity to have some casual conversations and get information out. We've been working around the clock. I was in at 5, John beat me by an hour. Literally while I've been sitting here, my phone is over here and it's going ping, 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 ping from roofing contractors calling us. The biggest issue that we've been dealing with lately is just the shutdowns. It comes in waves. Michigan shut down, so I had 15, 20 calls from Michigan contractors. Then Austin would go down, and then Orlando would go down, and that's it. That's what we've been dealing with primarily, is just helping roofing contractors navigate what the issues are immediately, and then kind of dealing with the contractual issues, the suspensions, the safety, and the HR related issues that come with this. It is we've been all hands on deck. I mean, there's not enough coffee I can fill in this to keep me going like I've got to. But we're here, man. We're doing it. And I always kind of viewed our role as a little bit different than other lawyers. I for those of you that know me, and Heidi, you know me pretty well, I'm very passionate about this industry. And this is our time to fight. This is what we have to be out there. We have to be getting as much information out there. If I can save one roofing contractor $100, I've done my job. That's how I view it. So I will put out, we're cranking out 3-4 articles a day. I'm doing videos off my damn phone. We got all kinds of stuff going on. So I will get the word out in any way I can. And, I'm glad that we can kind of use our skills and talents to try to do that.
Well, that's what we're seeing too. I mean, right now, the best tool that any contractor I think can have is information. What's the government saying? What are the suppliers saying? What's happening out there with the consumers, and being able to keep that essential business going? So John, what are you hearing? What are you hearing from other contractors around the country?
I think the biggest concerns right now are definitely job site shutdowns in different areas. Depending on the area of the country you're in, it is a major effect, and in other areas it's not so much yet. Nobody's really comfortable to know what's going to happen 6 weeks from now or even 2 weeks from now, because it changes so quick. So talking to different vendors and manufacturers, everybody for the most part seems to have the majority of material available. It's a lot of accessory products that are starting to run low that come in to the ports and things like that. So even if they're back up and running in the factories, it's the problem right now is getting it into the port of calls at the different parts, especially in the West, where they have very limited amount of stuff coming through. But right now we see everything moving, and not a major panic as far on the contracting end, but we do see areas we're trying to, my role is kind of dual role. I got to keep this place running every single day so Trent can get on and do what he's got to do. And then we're dealing with the contractors as well, which is a very good part of my job, and trying to help them through getting their job site secure. It's kind of like getting ready for hurricane season, except the hurricane's going to last for a while.
Yeah.
Like that. So that's what we've been seeing and working on.
Well, and all of you from Florida are used to hurricanes. Out here in Oregon, we're not so used to that. So we just get snow. But so what, I think it's interesting what you're saying too about helping those contractors with the different needs that they have. And I know, John, and Trent, you both are also going to be doing Cottony Consulting. So I just want to make sure to let everybody know about that, because I think, you know, it's legal, it's business, it's where we're scaling and where we're going. So there's a lot that the contractors need to know as we go
Right.
through this.
Yes.
So, you know, I've known John for 20 years. He's a good friend of mine, and you know, we're blessed to have him on board. He's got 45 years experience in the roofing industry, doing everything from being up on the roof to being a COO. He's worked for, you know, a handful of top 100 roofing contractors. He knows operations like the back of his hand. And what we're really trying to do is expand our services, so it's not just legal, that we're providing technical, we're providing business advice, we're providing safety. Our goal is to make sure that any need that a roofing contractor has, that not only are we capable of giving it to them, but we're capable of giving top tier expertise. And that's what I think, you know, having John at the table, for those of you that know him or familiar with him, he's got a big social media following. The guy's a roofing legend. So I'm blessed every day. Thank God he is here. Thank you, John, for being here. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Well, let's get into it, because I know there's a number of folks out there who have questions, and we had some of those come in. And you already touched on it a little bit, Trent. Contracts. What should contractors be doing? What should they be like? Give them something tangible to take home in this conversation about what they should be doing right now with contracts and dealing with owners.
Okay, so everybody that's on this webinar, listen to what I'm going to say. Okay, I'm going to give you real world advice. Okay, I am not a typical lawyer. I will tell you exactly what you need to do. If you are bidding contracts now, okay, if you're submitting proposals, I don't care if you're residential, commercial, industrial, you need to go to your acts of God clause, and I'll explain what that is, and make sure you add pandemics, epidemics, state of emergencies, anything like that. Okay, and so acts of God clause, what that says is, in the event of war, strike, terrorism, whatever, you're excused from further performance. Okay, it's impossible to perform, therefore you're excused, and there may be some other options for you to collect on delay claims, things like that. Most of those provisions in your contracts, regardless of whether you get them upstream or you had them yourself, doesn't have pandemic in there. Okay, go in and add it. Any contract that you're bidding, add pandemic, epidemic, coronavirus, whole list of stuff. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure you got a price acceleration provision in your contract. Okay, what that says is that in the event that any material line item goes up by 5% or more, that you're automatically entitled to a contract adjustment without change orders. Okay, that's important because, as John said, not a huge issue yet. I've seen some shortages with nails. I've seen some shortages with accessories, but I don't know how long this is going to go on. I mean, we've never experienced anything like this. So you need those protections in place, especially if you're doing work that is not going to be a 2-day, 3-day turnaround. So if you're doing condo work, if you're doing commercial work, if you're doing anything that's going to take a longer period of time, have that provision in there. Next thing that you want to do is you really want to look at your risk of loss provisions. We've had a lot of job site shutdowns, job site suspensions. I'm sure some of you out there have experienced that. What happens is when you walk off a job, because they've suspended it, you probably have material stored on that job. Okay, if you look at the contract, it will say subcontractor or contractor, or whatever position you are, assumes liability for all of those materials. So we've had one contractor that had a $600,000 loss because a storm came through during the suspension and destroyed all the materials. So normally builder's risk would kick in, and everybody ignores builder's risk. Nobody has it. This is the time to take a look at your contract and think about it. John and I were talking yesterday. He came up with a great idea of using drones to do suspension checks to make sure that the project is still where it needs to be. Okay, so if you're suspended on a job site, it's really critical that you document the file, that you tell your customer, look, this is what it is. We're warning you. This needs to be done. We can't do it. You've got to do it. Protect yourself. That's a key thing. Insurance. Okay, you really want to check. Call your agent. If you haven't already called your agent, shame on you. Call your agent. You want to ask about business interruption insurance. Normally, business interruption insurance has a pandemic exclusion on it. Okay, but where we've had some success has been environmental liability. Okay, believe it or not, if you really dig through some of your policies, there might be an environmental liability rider. you might have the ability to make a claim on insurance. Okay. Again,
okay.
consult with your agent, make sure that you are working through that and kind of figuring stuff out. That's just there's a lot more, but those are the big ones. So I would focus on those.
That is perfect. Okay, now I'm wondering, thank you, Trent. And you know what? I want everybody to know too, you just heard it. It's also, Trent has been writing this in articles. It's out on the coffee shop. He's got all of these tips in a lot of different places. So plus you can always call. Just call the office. They are wide open. But I think that's really important. Also, please, right now, if anybody has questions, hit that hand that says raise your hand, and we will unmute you, and we would love to have you asking questions and talking with Trent and John as we go through this. So again, next week we will have the video, but right now we're just going to be the 4 of us on video. Okay, essential business. Everybody's talking about what's essential business, what's an essential employee. Can you clear that up, or at least where we're at today, which we all know might change by tomorrow?
So I'm going to try to not give you a lawyer answer, but the answer is it depends. I would say 90% of the closures out there follow the Department of Homeland Security's guidance, which sucks. Okay. Basically, if you look at it, there's a provision within DHS that says that plumbers, electricians, exterminators, and other service providers essential for emergencies are excluded. The way that we have interpreted that, and the way that many jurisdictions have interpreted that, is that roofing construction is necessary. It's an essential business. Some jurisdictions have come out and just made a broad, yeah, construction is exempted. Okay. Other jurisdictions have shut it down altogether. Pennsylvania, Washington, we're trying to work with the group up there to kind of figure some of that stuff out. Miami-Dade has had some problems. Okay. My advice to the roofing contractors out there, okay, is if it is ambiguous at all, keep doing work as usual, be safe, okay? If you end up with a problem, you've got a problem and you can figure it out. But right now, if you have the capability of keeping your crews busy, of making money, making sure stuff goes through, I can't think of a more essential business than roofing. Obviously, I'm biased. But one thing that I did that was useful for an Arkansas contractor is we created an essential business notice that crew can carry in their trucks. And what it says is, notice of essential business. I track the order, and I track all that. And we started doing this. The first area to go down was the Bay Area. If you remember, there were about 6 counties that went down, and roofing contractors out there were getting pulled over. So their crews that, they're getting pulled over, they didn't know what to do. So I created this essential business notice, and the notice has been very effective. I haven't heard of one issue after we've created that. Now, please recognize that it's not definitive. Just because there's a notice that I prepared, it doesn't mean it's the law. It just means you're trying to explain it, and it gives you something to kind of explain to authorities why you're an essential business. So that's something useful that I think, roofing contractors and crew can have out there. As this thing is developing, a great example is here, locally in Florida, we've had disputes. A lot of it's gone along political lines. The county will fight with the city, and the rules change daily. So it's critical that you focus and you check your local guidelines. We had the governor of Washington came out with some additional guidelines on their order yesterday. Our initial interpretation was that construction was capable. The governor was like, not so much. So we're trying to figure out now, how do we deal with that? And I've got one of our lawyers working on that right now. So check, stuff changes daily. Make sure you keep checking.
Your team in Charlotte in the Carolinas just sent me something too on tips for those 2 states, for North Carolina and South Carolina. So I think it is, it's not just obviously the federal and stuff, but like you're talking about, just really get in touch with the people in the state too, and the associations that know that are tracking it day by day, because it's so different everywhere you go.
Right. And we've been working closely with all our associations to make sure that, not only are we providing, benefits to members, but giving us access and making sure that anything that the associations or the members need, we're giving it to them.
Perfect. So John, talk a little bit, I mean, one of the questions we had here too was just talking a little bit about those crews on the roof. I mean, you've done everything in roofing and you've run huge crews. What are some of the things that the folks, contractors should be kind of looking at as they're sending their crews out on jobs? What are some of the safety, just talk a little bit about that, best practices.
Sure. Well, one of the things I was talking to a few people last night about is that was one of the questions I had. How are the crews doing? And a lot of them are very nervous. They're nervous about the same thing the rest of us are. So safety is highly important to them. It should be highly important to everybody else. But one thing I want to jump in with is leadership at this point. Don't forget, as a business owner, business leader, don't forget about your crews. Even though we are on lockdown, if you've got them out there working, I know I've talked to a few different companies. Some haven't done it yet. I recommended it to them, and some have done it. Let them see you. Get out there and support them. Don't just, even if it's coming in the morning and see them, but get to a job site. Once they see you're there, they're going to feel a lot better. They're just as nervous as everybody else is. And as far as the safety goes, we talked about it. Definitely water cooler safety couldn't be any more important than it's ever been now. So you want to make sure all that, you got plenty of fresh water and disposable and clean cups and everything else that needs to happen that you're supposed to do, but now is even more important time. I know a couple of the contractors I talked to, even though there is a shortage on the masks and all that, there's no better time than to have your crews wearing, the little masks that they can keep everybody protected in case somebody does sneeze, because there is allergy season. And, we talked about that too. Everybody's afraid to sneeze or cough now that, you may be considered you have it. But unfortunately, especially here in the South, and I know up along the Northeast, my son lives in New York and everything's blooming early up there too. So there is allergies. So safety, leadership, nothing more important now. The crews want to work. That's kind of their escape from all this. They get to go home at night like the rest of us, and they got to hear about their families and everything else. But keep your crews safe, show them good leadership, and keep them producing. That's really what they need right now.
I think that's perfect. And I was talking to a major manufacturer this week, and one of their top level VPs was in the office, and I said, "What? Aren't you supposed to be working from home?" And she says, "Well, we have a certain number that can be in the offices, and we feel it's only fair if we're asking our workers to go into the manufacturing plants and continue to making products so we can keep getting it out to the contractors, that we're also here and working, and they see us not always working remote and actually going into the plants too." So I had, such a great concept of leadership across the board, whether it's manufacturing or contracting or wherever it may be, that everybody knows we're all in this together. So I love, yes.
We have a question from Michelle Boykin. And it says, we received documentation that was state specific from Cottony regarding COVID-19. Can Trent share a little bit on that offering?
Sure. Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you asking that question. So we've got a couple of different packages together that we've tried to, we know what roofing contractors need. Okay, we get the same calls. Anytime that we start getting numerous calls on that, we try to get it out. So two different things that we've done. And we have, for the most in-depth legal resources in the United States right now, you go to our website, cottonycl.com, you'll see it. There is so much content on there, okay? And you can find these offerings on there. One is for $300, we do a toolbox talk, we do a job site protection plan, and all the HR policies that you need. Okay, it's a package deal. You get everything in there. We had Ben Briggs, who is our head of our employment group, along with our OSHA team, put that stuff together. The other thing is the essential business notice, and we hand tailor it depending on where it is. Charges $100 per notice or per contractor. So both are reasonable, both are affordable, and it's a great way to do it. And finally, our subscribers are getting, they are definitely getting the benefit right now. If you're a subscription client, like I said, this thing has not stopped ringing. What I do is I take this to customer service and I say, tell me who our subscription clients are. They get the calls back first, okay? And they are getting a ton of resources for free. So thank you to all our subscribers. We really appreciate your support and loyalty.
That is great. And, oh, good. Michelle, can you hear us? You're unmuted.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Sorry. I muted myself.
Oh, great. Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question for Trent or John?
No, I know that for us, it's been something that we've, used and valued since the moment we got it. And of course, things are still changing, but I think it kind of gave us a sense of peace a little bit. So I appreciated that Trent had that offering. And I mean, it's definitely worth the money. And if you're a subscriber, of course, you're getting it already. But I just think it's good to get that word out there because, so many of us as business owners are just kind of in freak out mode at the moment. So anything that we can have that kind of gives us a sense of peace on what's going on is helpful.
Thank you,
Hey, Michelle, can you introduce yourself and your company and maybe just tell us a little bit about the atmosphere, what's happening in your neck of the woods?
Sure. I'm Michelle Boykin. I'm with Rackley Roofing out of Nashville, Tennessee. Here in Tennessee, we've gotten some, basically stay at home kind of things, but we've not seen the essential business lockdown like some of the other states have. So for us, that's not a concern yet. I'm sure it will be. We're kind of in a little bit of a strange situation here. We had tornadoes 2 weeks ago, and so we have literally buildings that have no roofs. So I think that for us, roofing is an essential business no matter what happens because of that fact. So we're just trying to keep our crews motivated. We are 100% web-based right now for our office staff. Nobody's going into the office. So we're trying to keep everybody as safe as we can. But, it's like anywhere else. You just kind of have to take it day by day and hour by hour and hope that things can be somewhat normal.
It's great. Michelle, thank you. Michelle is an RCS influencer and writes for Roofers Coffee Shop. So Michelle, thank you. Keep us informed. We want to keep this conversation going with everyone. So if anyone else, please write in your questions or raise your hands if you'd like to share kind of what's happening in where you're at, or have some additional questions for Trent and John. And then as you can see, Megan's very good at like making sure we get your questions in. So easy to do. Okay, one of the questions that came through earlier was, what about subcontractors?
Mm-hmm.
So how should contractors handle, or companies that are using subs through all this?
Sure, and I'll let John kind of talk to it a little bit, but let me tell you what I've seen. So keep in mind, your subcontract normally has a safety provision in there that allows you to enforce safety on your sub. Okay, so you don't, some precautions that you would have to take from an HR standpoint when you're dealing with your employees, you don't necessarily have to do the same thing with subs. So what you want to do on your job site is make sure that you're limiting trailer access. Okay, get rid of meetings altogether. You should be able to do them virtually. Daily reports don't need to be handed in person. You can take a photo or you can submit it electronically. You want to ensure that your employees are protected from subcontractor interaction to the extent that they can. We have really been proactive in trying to figure out ways to limit exposure on job sites to allow crew to continue to do what they do. I've had the question, I did a brief video on it yesterday. One was, crew cab safety and using shared equipment. If you are a prime roofing contractor on a job site, don't share your equipment anymore. Okay, don't share your tools. Stop it, because what you're doing is every time somebody picks up a nail gun, they could have the virus, they could give it to the next person. Sanitize all your door handles, your tools, your equipment, your crew cabs daily in the morning and after work. Okay, if you have workers that are driving in a crew cab, okay, 4 max N95 mask, sanitize before and after work. Okay, otherwise tell your crew to drive directly to the job site. Normally you wouldn't necessarily be exposed to travel pay there if they're going from home to the job site, but keep in mind there's some rules to that, if it's in the commuting area and things along those lines. The key thing is you need to instruct your subs on what you are doing and tell them and enforce it through your safety provisions in your subcontract. Okay, you don't want, we have some high profile issues right now where roofing contractors are on job sites where there are deaths from coronavirus and everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. So what you don't want is, you don't want a situation where you haven't, if you see somebody sick, you haven't removed them. You have a sub that is a problem, remove them, because there are bad guy lawyers out there that are going like this, that are just waiting for this to, you know, they're getting the suits ready to go. So please, you know, it is, if you have somebody that's got a fever, if you got somebody that's sick, keep in mind, under the EEOC guidelines, you, unlike normal, you have the ability in a pandemic to take an employee's temperature, to ask questions about where they've been, what their illnesses are, things like that. You have to protect your other employees. You have to protect your business, so that if you have employees or subs that you believe may have the virus or are sick, remove them from the job. Okay, you don't want to be in a position where you're exposing your employees or your customers to potential illness and liability.
Wow. John, anything to add to that? I mean, especially like taking people's temperature on the job. There's a lot going on, not just with subs, but the crews themselves too. Some great points.
Yeah, no, we talked to a contractor yesterday who actually had 3 people on their crew starting to cough and sneeze, and they actually sent them home, which was a smart thing to do, and had them separated. But in turn, that caused an entire ruckus through the entire job site. So I actually visited a job site yesterday. I still like to get out there and see what's going on. This was a new construction job site. A friend of mine was at GC. And what they were doing is they were actually splitting. They're still doing morning huddles. They wanted to get the information out. They're not doing job site meetings as they normally do. But what they kind of did is they were separating the property and having the different subcontractors in a circle, but far enough apart. So they were spread out quite a ways. And that way they were able to get the information. So they would go almost from kind of like an old school project, go from huddle to huddle to huddle and get the information out. And then they would go to work. And I did notice that they were keeping everyone separated. So one trade, like you normally run into those on top of each other, the trades now are better coordinated, working on different sections of the building so that they're not on top of each other, which is recommended. Now, if you're using a subcontractor to perform your work, you know, from a common sense standpoint, you want to treat them as they're your own at this point and make sure they are following all your safety procedures. And that's because they're going to not be as honest probably up front with you if somebody's sick, because they want to continue to earn money like everybody else. But ultimately, if there's an issue, it's going to be your issue, as Trent said, from the legal side. But the business standpoint, now's not a better time than to rein any subcontractor in you're using to make sure that they're following your rules. I would not leave them unguided on any job sites for any length of time.
Oh, good points. Excellent. Good. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, type them in. I'm just working through the questions that we already received from all of you. So, but I want to make sure everybody knows they come through. And in fact, I'm going to do a call out right now to Seth. I know you're out there and you are doing some great things as an RCS influencer and also on the insurance front too. So if you have any thoughts, please type them in and share them with the crowd. So.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Seth.
It's definitely getting, a little bit crazy out here. It's, different things are starting to happen. As far as the construction side goes, it's, that's still considered a component industry. So our governor out here hasn't really completely shut down construction yet. And it's definitely more parameters now as far as, like Trent was saying, you gotta make sure you're keeping your social distancing. You gotta make sure that you're sanitizing everything above and beyond what your normal process was, if there ever was a process really before this. So, from an insurance side, we haven't really seen a ton of shutdowns. Projects are still going on. I'm getting calls every day to review contracts and say, hey, or should we still have the guys working? And as of right now, absolutely yes. It's tough just to shut down our businesses and tell guys, hey, you can't go out there and work, but you have to do it within the guidelines, and you got to be extra careful. It's interesting because I've been following all along with the workers' comp carrier out here in Oregon, which is safe, which is the kind of the go-to workers' comp carrier, and it's very difficult. They keep saying, well, if any of your employees get sick on the job, is that going to be workers' comp related? And it's very difficult to tell whether or not you got exposed from, exposed to COVID-19 on the job or somewhere else. So it's, if any of your employees do end up getting, COVID-19 or there any signs of it, be extra cautious, because like Trent said earlier, you don't want to have a rogue attorney say, well, all of these employees got exposed at work and now it's a workers' comp claim, because that could be definitely detrimental to your experience, rating on your workers' comp and things like that.
Seth, hey, can you introduce yourself, your company, and just a little bit about what's happening in Oregon, like what you're hearing from the contractors?
Sure. Yeah. Seth Peach with Integrity Insurance and Bonding. We're one of the Roofers Coffee Shop influencers. Well, that everything as far as that we're hearing, as far as the construction side out here, is it's business as usual, but there's a new usual. So this is going to be, everybody's got to take extreme precautions, social distancing, make sure that everybody's sanitized when they can do, virtual meetings, when they can use drones. I mean, the use of drones now is really, escalated. So there's been a lot of new innovative ideas that contractors are having to do, and we're starting to see it now. But that also adds a different dynamic to an insurance perspective, because a lot of this stuff with insurance, you have to have special coverages or special endorsements to cover drones or different types of, things that they're coming up with. And so it's been an insurance, it's not a nightmare, but it's definitely trying to make sure that everybody's covered to do what they're doing, because a lot of the insurance industry was not prepared for a pandemic like this, and now we're all trying to make adjustments on the fly. And what's been good is most of the insurance companies have been very understanding and have been really willing to work with us to make the appropriate adjustments to make sure that coverage still exists for the new technology and the new stuff that the guys are doing.
That is great. Seth, thank you. Thank you for being on here and sharing. And like Trent said earlier, all contractors should have already called their insurance brokers. So if you haven't, be sure to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a question that I have down here, and I want to make sure we get to this, but a little bit of clarity on the Family First. Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Trent, can you talk to everybody about that a little bit?
Sure. So the legal terminology for the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is that it's a hot mess. I need a slide rule and some graph paper to really explain it to you. But let me just boil it down. We did an article on it, and we've got a lot of information out there. But here, what's interesting is the Department of Labor is trying to catch up. They just put out some guidelines yesterday. I've got them here. And what they have said is this, okay? Starting April 1st, if you have under 500 employees, you are covered by one of two acts, either the Emergency Sick Leave Act or the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act, okay? The Department of Labor is supposed to come out with guidance about what happens if you have less than 50 employees, okay? If you have less than 50 employees and you can show that complying with the Family First Coronavirus Response Act would cause a hardship, then, or jeopardize the viability of your company, then you may be able to get out of it. Okay, the DOL, all they've said at this point is, we'll get to that. That doesn't help me. I want to know whether or not, a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people on this line, a lot of people out there, 50 or under, you want to know whether or not it applies to you. So what is required under both acts? And again, there's a great Q&A under the DOL that kind of, boils it down into its simplest terms. So under the Emergency Sick Leave Act, an employee is entitled to paid leave if he or she is caring for someone who is subject to a quarantine or isolation order, the employee's child whose school or daycare is closed due to coronavirus, or the employees experience any other substantially similar condition as defined by the Department of Health that involves coronavirus, okay? It goes into the amount of leave, and there's calculations that you need to figure out. But bottom line is that after April 1st, any of your employees could receive 2 weeks of paid time off, okay? The calculations on that differ. So if they are full-time, it's normally considered to be 80 paid hours. If they are tending to a family member that needs help or a child, it's 2/3 of that. It's maxed out at $5,110 for full-time. For part-time, you've got to figure out how many hours a day that they're working, okay? And it's maxed out roughly at 200 or a total of 2,000. Again, I'm not going to get into all the calculations. It's very complex. Go to either our website for more in-depth information or check out our article. But let me give you some real world advice, okay? The Family Leave Act scares a lot of roofing contractors, okay? It should. It scares us. And here's why, okay? If you have employees that you are considering whether or not to keep during these times, make a decision before April 1st, okay? I am not telling you to make that decision based on this act. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that if you are in the process of considering that, then by the end of the month would be a great time to do that. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is because this act puts a whole bunch of liability on employers. It's great for employees, not so good for employers. Now, there's been talks about credits and this and that, and I don't know what's going to happen at this point. Okay, it's a constantly changing thing. So tax credit doesn't do me any good right now. Doesn't do me any good. That's something that I get next year. So I'm talking to you now as a business owner, not as a lawyer. Take a look at this. Okay, go to look at our article. We've got one on Roofers Coffee Shop that boils it down, and then also go to DOL.gov and look at their guidelines on Family First Act that has Q&A in there. Make some decisions. Okay, that's what I would recommend now. And this is a moving target. The DOL may come out with guidelines that say if you're under 50 employees, you don't have to do it. Yeah. But right now, I don't know what that means. So it scares me because it puts a lot of potential liability and additional cost on roofing contractors. Now, another question that I've gotten on this is if they can continue to work at home, then this isn't paid time off. It's not sick leave. It's not anything that would be covered. So if you're like Rackley and Michelle, who has, they're melting atoms with their technology up there, they can work at home, they could work on Mars, they can work wherever they want. And they were prepared to do that. But if you are an old school roofing contractor and you're still running QuickBooks Desktop and you don't have the capability to do stuff online, then this act may kick in. And if it kicks in, then you may have that additional liability as an employer.
Wow. Cool. Okay, so Megan, I think we have another question.
Yes, we have a question from Vicky Sharples here. Is there any documentation or forms that a contractor can follow to show that they have followed safety guidelines in case of a workers' comp claim?
So the safety guidelines, I always look to OSHA for safety guidelines. Workers' comp, as Seth mentioned earlier, very difficult to prove that you got COVID-19 on the job. Very, very difficult to prove. And I can tell you that the workers' compensation carriers are going to figure out how not to provide coverage if they can. Obviously, I'm pessimistic, and that's my nature. I have to be. I'm a lawyer, but as far as safety guidelines, OSHA has put out a general guideline on how to deal with COVID-19. There is not a specific OSHA regulation that deals with coronavirus. Okay, I'll say that again. There's not a specific CFR code of federal regulations that deals with coronavirus. What they have said is follow the general duty clause. The general duty clause says, as an employer, it is your job to safeguard your employees from potential hazards. Okay, real broad, not a lot of guidance there. In addition, they said, look, if you're in a situation where you have to engage in respiratory equipment, follow the respiratory guidelines. The final thing that they said is follow the bloodborne pathogen regulations. This is not a bloodborne disease, but a lot of the provisions in there kind of tell you what to do and how to do it. Okay, so from an OSHA standpoint, they have given guidance, but they kind of punted it, to be honest with you. If you go to the OSHA guidelines, it's on our website. I know Roofers Coffee Shop has it as well. You will see a pyramid, and that pyramid shows you what risk that you're in. Most construction workers are probably in that low level risk. But we have some roofing contractors that are in the medium to high risk because they are working on hospitals, they are working on emergency care centers, they are working in areas where there is a higher exposure. Okay, if I'm on a roof and there's an exhaust vent, I don't know what's blowing out at me. And, you know, I know they're supposed to have filters and everything else, but I don't know. So if you're on a higher risk job site, you do want to take additional precautions. I mentioned things like, you know, putting N95s on crew that are riding together, doing anything and everything that you can to be safe. Along those lines, consider remote safety training. You know, if you can engage in toolbox talks, you know, one of the critical things is coronavirus toolbox talks, educating your crew. You know, the crew, like John said, the crew are scared. You know, they're scared. They don't know what's going on. They need the money. We've had a lot of crew that, you know, if they've got symptoms, they're going to work because they have to pay. And it's the superintendent's job, it's the crew leader's job to show the signs, just like we have signs of impairment for marijuana and opioids. You need signs of COVID-19. They need to be able to pull that worker out of the field, send them home so that you don't expose the rest of your crew. John and I were just talking about this earlier. John, have you seen anything in talking to our roofing contractors out there?
They're exactly what you said, though. They're more nervous about anything else, and they are doing the toolbox talks. We're seeing a lot of people are recording them with FaceTime. And usually, if they don't have the software, a lot of the older schoolers you talked about that are not up on all of it, they are starting to use their phones more, and you have video on your phones, record these toolbox talks and do everything you can to document everything you're doing. I mean, that's one of the things we did when we put out our roof report. Wasn't specifically dealing with safety reports, but documentation. Right now, documentation can't be any more important than it's ever been because we don't know where we're going. You know, no one really knows. We're all optimistic. We'd like to be through this in 2 or 3 weeks, but are we really going to be? I don't know. If I knew that, I would be playing the stock market and everything else right now and be retired in 3 weeks, but that's not going to happen. The other thing that we saw, I did talk to a few contractors, and Trent talked about the hospitals and that. Not going to mention any names at this point, but there is a nationally hospital that has hospital operations throughout the country. They are shutting down all construction Thursday night nationwide. They do not want any contractors on site for any reason whatsoever because they're concerned, for the same reason Trent said, passing it from what they're doing there to, you know, and to workers and anybody else and getting it even further. So I think besides the documentation, shutdowns are maybe not as prevalent now, but we need to be prepared for them. And I think as a business owner, crew leaders and everything else, you need to be prepared for that because it's going to get tighter and tighter. One of the things I've been working on with different clients is getting prepped your business, looking at it for, you know, almost recession proof at this point. We all were concentrating on sales and backlog, and most companies do have a large backlog if it continues to move forward. But you want to really drill down and get ready because we were forced into an overnight recession, even though maybe we're not feeling it just yet, but it will come.
Yeah, that's good because really we do. I mean, I think we're constantly looking at that. What's down the road? I know Vicki and I we're talking about it every day, like, and we know how important it is to keep the business going right now and to stay in front of your customers, to really help our contractors stay in front of their customers, because the roofs are what is protecting everything. So we've got to keep that moving. Now, I know, Trent, that you are a very popular man, and you actually have another webinar coming up in about 13 minutes. So Trent's gonna sneak out of here a little bit, and I'm gonna ask John, or we have another question here too, and another comment. But before we do that, Trent, can you just kind of wrap up some thoughts and to everybody listening, and let them just thank you for being here, and what do you give us some wrap up?
So the first thing that I would tell everybody out there is we are strong. Okay, we will survive. Okay, I told everybody I had a State of the Union yesterday for our employees, and I just said, I've been through terrorism, I've been through the financial collapse, I can get through a pandemic. You know,
Yes.
lead. You know, I am working as hard as I can humanly work. I need my employees to see that. You know, I am here, I am working. And that's the important message that you need to send to your crews. It's not about hiding under a desk. It's about taking ownership. This is the time to lead. What I would tell you is be proactive. Okay. I just, on the way to work this morning, I had a phone call from a roofing contractor that does residential. You are no longer a bank. Okay. There is no payment upon completion. You get paid up front. All those homeowners that are giving you work, what's it going to look like 30 days from now? Okay, they're not going to pay you. They're going to, you know, pay their electric bill. So get paid up front. Change your terms. Renegotiate with your vendors and suppliers. You know, get that materials that you need. Have your suppliers store it. We've had conversations with every single one of our vendors. You know, and I think you need to do the same. Be proactive. Don't wait until stuff starts getting bad. Do it now. You know, because right now construction's booming, production is up, everybody's working. That's great. That's all great. But are you going to get paid? That's the issue. Okay. So be mindful of your terms, protect yourself, document, and don't be afraid to ask for new terms or money. We live in a different world now. Regardless, we are here. Okay. I'm not going anywhere. I will keep talking until I can't talk anymore. Heidi, Megan, I want to personally thank you guys. You know, Heidi, you're a close friend. I think about you often, and this is fantastic what you guys are doing. Roofers Coffee Shop, absolutely incredible. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I'll let John stay on, and I'm off to the next. So
Perfect. Thank you, Trent.
Yes.
Thanks for being
All right.
here. So we're going to take a couple more questions. We have one here, and this is just a great comment that just came in, but we wanted to mention that Harness has a COVID 19 Toolbox Talk app. So, and I know a lot of the technology companies out there have apps that they are developing quickly to help the contractors. So John, maybe talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing technology-wise. I know Michelle's still on here. They're doing huge amounts of things. What do we have on, you know, what would you recommend from a technology standpoint for all the contractors?
Well, definitely Tom's app is a very good app if you don't have anything pre-set up. He sent me a test on that a while ago through RT3, and I definitely recommend anybody. And I don't want to talk for him, but I think it's free, as you said, so it'll help you work on it real quick to use it right on your phone, which is important now. I've got a lot of contractors that are using technology to the fullest, or trying to get the technology up and running. One thing we've been very busy with, I've been working with contractors. I don't want to consider myself an expert, but I work very well with Smartsheet. We're using it here. That was one of the first things I started when I started here at Cottony Construction Law, was to get us up on that. And I have 4 clients now that we're getting up and running very quickly. And there's a lot of things you can do with it. So now's a great time, even though all the other stuff we got going on, is to think about 30 days out, 60 days out, 90 and more. So you got time, put somebody on, especially everybody working from home. Happy to help anybody out. We got videos out there and everything else. Give us a call. But technology, if you haven't made the switch, one thing Trent and I talked about the other day, artificial intelligence and all the stuff that we've been talking about and you all been talking about, probably got pushed up by 5 years with this pandemic. There's no doubt that it's going to be more robotics, not only in the roofing industry, but the manufacturing plants. I think you're going to see that. I think the technology industry is going to come back stronger than ever. So for a roofing contractor or any other contractor out there, now's the time to put your plan in place, because you do not want to be left behind, because this will get over. As you said earlier, being in this 45 years, from the 70s all the way up, I've seen the oil shortage. You couldn't buy gas, you couldn't get your crews. Black Monday or Black Friday, whatever they call the stock market crash in the 80s. I come from the Northeast, so up there, construction in the 80s was non-existent, and we really, you had re-roofs if you could do it. So I've seen a lot. We've come through it. I do a lot of fun posts too on LinkedIn, roofing history. You know, and if you go back, I mean, the roofing industry got started in its glory days of modernness about 1850s. So when you think about all the world events that the roofing industry has come through and that we've survived, it's pretty amazing. So we will get through this. Don't bury your head in the sand on this one. Don't overreact. You know, as we're doing a presentation later, one of the things at the end is, you know, I call be a hawk. Be smart. Think about what you're doing, get your plans in place, get your businesses squared away and straight, move forward, but most important, lead. Lead with yourself, lead with technology, show everyone that you're in the forefront. And with technology, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the other ways, let your customers know that you're on top of what's going on, the best that anybody can be. It's nothing more important than communication at this point. I'm actually seeing even more. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, John, because that is so important, because you have been a great contributor on the Roofers Coffee Shop forum, on our LinkedIn, on all of those things, and also some of the things on the site. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say you aren't just saying this, you're doing it every day.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I like to put the history posts out there. I mean, Bruno and I are, you know, everyone knows Bruno Batista. There's not a person in the roofing industry that doesn't know Bruno. And we go back and forth, and you know, and with the messaging services that are out there, you're constantly in communication with people. And one of the things is get good information out there, have some fun with it too. Now's the time to let people know that you're in charge, you're leading, you're moving ahead, you're not scared. We all are, but we can't show it. There's too many people that are counting on us to be the leaders of the industry. Everyone on this call, regardless of your position or what you do in the industry, you are a leader, or you wouldn't even be on this call to begin with. So lead.
Perfect. You know, thank you, because you and I, before we just started this, we talked about on the training page that's going to be, that is right now on Roofers Coffee Shop, and we have the NRCA information on there. NRCA has a great page where they are doing updates. So I think, you know, being part of that leadership is really understanding how to continue to get up-to-date information. And so when I think about that, we are, like Trent said, Vicki and I and our team have worked nonstop since this started to make sure we get all the information out there. I've seen the same thing on Cottony. I see the same thing on NRCA, and all of the associations are just doing an amazing job. So I want to encourage everybody to, you know, I love that, take the lead, which obviously you all are, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning if you're on the West Coast. So I want to talk just a little bit. We have about a few minutes left, but I do want to share with everybody on the call that this is going to happen every Thursday morning. And next Thursday, we are going to have the video fixed. So we'll all be able to see your faces. So everybody think about getting up early and getting ready. Get your coffee poured. And next week, our topic is going to be distribution. So we are going to have distribution experts on the show next week. And we're going to talk about supply, about what's happening in distribution, about what contractors should be doing, taking a lot of what you heard about today and being able to now ask those same questions next week to the leaders of our distribution channels. So please be thinking about that. Think about the questions that you want to ask, and get out to our forum. It's on Roofers Coffee Shop forum. You'll see it in there under Roofers Talk. Leave your questions, make some comments from this morning on what you think. We need to keep the conversation going. I think part of leadership is really caring about what is happening to everybody in all parts of the country. And I'm looking at the list of names here, and we have people represented from the entire country, and we thank you so much. We're also recording this, so it will be on demand for everyone to watch on our Coffee Conversations page. So with that said, John, any last words?
I'm here to help. A lot of you know me that are on here. I don't know all who's on here, but I have friends throughout the industry all around the country and even internationally through LinkedIn, which And if you know me, and if you don't know me, if you reach out, I will find, if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer for you and get back with you. That's what I'm here to do.
That is great. And Megan, thank you for helping this morning. And you'll be here again next week, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Of course. And I want to put a shout out to Karen Edwards, our editor, who's on and has been helping throughout everything and writing so many great articles. Just check out her articles on what's going on. And to Vicki Sharples, who's on, who never wants me to mention her, but I want to send a thank you for that too, for her being here this early in the morning and making all this happen. So we will see all of you next week. Thank you so much for being here today, and we'll look forward to our next coffee conversation.